industrial controls, building automation, BMS or BAS if you're from across the pond. These are all very broad terms, and it's difficult if you're new into the industry to understand the differences and the similarities between the many sectors that falls under controls and automation. So in this video, I'm going to give you a complete overview of the industry and a clear breakdown of all the sectors and how they're categorized. So by the end of watching this, you'll have a complete understanding of all the incredible opportunities this industry has to offer and where you would be best suited if you wanted to progress your career in this lucrative field. And just so you know who you're listening to, my name is Chris Guyatt, and I've worked as an electromechanical engineer across all the sectors of controls and automation over the last 20 years. And now my team and I help electricians and engineers get into the industry fast in under 8 weeks and triple their income within a year. So let's get into the video.
Okay, so are you ready for this controls and automation industry overview? Like, I've really taken a lot of time splitting this up, breaking this down, visualizing it. So yeah, I think you're going to take a hell of a lot of value out of this and get a really good understanding of how I see the industry and how I see it being split. So as I mentioned, controls and automation industry overview. So the first thing is we need to think about it as, because it's very broad, controls and automation is very, very broad, and we need a way to split it up because there are specific sectors that it splits up into. So the best way I think about categorizing these sectors, are they habitable environments or are they unhabitable environments? So that's kind of how they're split. So habitable environments would be buildings, properties, ships, yachts, homes, boats, places that we live, that we spend time, that we stay overnight, or we spend 8 hours of the day working, places that we need to be comfortable and habitable. That's the key thing there. Now the other thing is uninhabitable environments, and really here is like, they're not places that we live, that we work. Like, yes, we might work in a factory, but it's there for a sole purpose of producing. It's not something where we're going to relax and enjoy ourselves and chill out, go to sleep, or an environment where we sort of need to focus and be productive, if you know what I'm saying. So that's how they're split, and I'm going to come back to uninhabitable environments, but basically industrial sectors, so manufacturing, chemical, oil and gas, pharmaceutical, food and drink and beverages. You get the idea. There's so many sectors that comes under the industrial sector, which are ultimately uninhabitable environments. But yeah, I'm going to come back over to uninhabitable environments. So habitable environments. Now this splits up into two categories in terms of controls and automation. The first one, let's have a look, is AV, audio visual. Okay, so what makes up audio visual? Audio visual controls and automation. So things like speakers, microphones, screens, TVs, digital signage, cinema rooms, media rooms, conference rooms, video distribution, broadcasting, satellite, CCTV, etc., etc. So I would be thinking about sort of AV automation in terms of commercial office spaces and home automation, smart homes, high-end residential. That's where you'd have like more AV heavy automation systems. And as you can see, it kind of covers all of these things here. Now, just to give you a taste of some AV systems, some of the popular AV systems in the market. Okay, and you may have heard of some of these, but these are the top ones that I'm aware of at least. So Control4, Crestron, Savant, RTI and Elan. These are all the top players for AV automation systems. And just so you're aware, the types of controllers that pretty much, generally speaking, I'm speaking generally speaking, these controllers, these systems have are PC-based processors. They're processors, all right? So here's an example from Control 4, and this is their smaller unit. They do have bigger processors, but this is just using this as an example. So you can see what they look like. They basically look like PCs. You look on the back of them, and they're PCs/TVs in terms of like the inputs, outputs. So yeah, pause the video if you want to spend a bit of time actually looking at these inputs and outputs. But yeah, hopefully you get the point in terms of what they look like here. Now, going down, the cable infrastructure, the AV systems typically work on, the cable infrastructure, like the communication at least, and actually when you're talking about AV systems, the bulk of it is communication. You know, it's telling a TV to distribute, or telling multiple TVs to distribute, you know, one channel across, you know, 3 or 4 TVs within the house, for example. You know, simplistic example, but most of the cable infrastructure, certainly nowadays, you know, where you're having less HDMI distribution, you know, you can pretty much do everything over Ethernet, should I say. Yeah, that's basically the infrastructure. You can, I think even, I'm not, this is not an area of expertise for me, AV, I'm just aware of it. But I think you don't necessarily even need coax cables so much anymore, because I think you can put them over Ethernet, but don't hold me to that. I might be wrong on that one. But the bulk of it is Ethernet. And the protocol is IP, so Internet Protocol. And really the bulk of all of this, the skill set that this comes down to, is IT and networking. Because it's all based on Internet Protocol, IP, you know, IP addresses, you need to have a skill set really in networking and IT. Okay, so it makes sense that the people that go into this side of controls and automation are IT and network professionals, because they've got that fundamental understanding and the foundations built in networking, IP networking and IT. And this is what you tend to see. A lot of people that get into like cinema rooms, smart home automation, using AV-based systems, people that do office fit outs in terms of like the AV, using things like Crestron and stuff. A lot of them, they do have a good understanding in networking and IP, because it allows them to do all of these things much more easily. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that gives you an understanding of like the AV, audio visual side of controls and automation. And as I said, really what you see is the people that do well and are successful on this side of things are IT and network professionals, because they've already got that understanding, that foundation in IP networking under their belts. Now let's move back up to the top. Okay, so back to habitable environments. We're still sticking with habitable environments. Now let's go over to this side. And here is where we're focusing not on AV, not on audio visual. We're focusing specifically on BMS, BEMS, BAS, so building management systems, building energy management systems, building automation systems. This is more what people use over in the States. But ultimately, it all comes under building energy management automation systems. Okay, that's what this is what we're going to call this stuff that we're looking at the moment. And then what comes under this sector is broken up into HVAC, lighting, shading, energy management, renewables, security, access, fire, plumbing, water management, elevators and escalators. Typically, this is how they would be split. Now, there is a bit of overlap. Like, you can do lighting, you can do some security and access with AV. So of course there is some crossover. I'm not saying that there isn't, but when we're talking about building management systems, building energy management systems, this is what we're talking about, okay? Because we're managing the building. These are all the subsystems that come under a building. So let's continue down. Now let's have a look at some of the traditional or pretty standard BMS systems that you'll find in the UK market. Now, I'm obviously based in the UK, and some of these brands may be available in other countries, or maybe you'll have slightly different ones. But I think most people will, certainly like ABB, Vargo, Wago, KNX, a lot of people will be aware of these brands, but maybe you're using slightly different control systems. But yeah, Zenio, so this is a manufacturer using the KNX protocol, and then there's lots of other manufacturers that use KNX, but Zenio are particularly good at HVAC and BMS. Vargo, yeah, we should all know Vargo. So Trend, Tridium, they're probably the two main players in the UK. Certainly Trend is. I would say that they're losing market share fairly quickly because they're a closed system. So you're seeing far more systems like Tridium, ABB, KNX, Zenio, Vargo, Diztech, that's another one. Like they're losing market share, I would say. Loxon as well. So these are all pretty common BMS control systems in the UK, and you may be familiar with some of them. Now, moving down, when comparing directly to the types of controllers that we were using for AV systems that were all PC based, with BMS systems, you look at all of these brands and manufacturers, they're using PLCs. So programmable logic controllers. And this example here is a Zenio all-in box. Very familiar with these. Great brand, Zenio. Use them a lot for my BMS systems, and you can also use them for any type of building control, whether it's homes, commercial, if you're even doing industrial building control. Great brand. So yeah, as you can see, sort of inputs, pretty standard stuff. Inputs, outputs, PLC. You program things, you monitor things, you do some programming, and then things happen on the output side. Now, talking about the cable infrastructure, specifically the comms, so comparing directly to the comms, so the communication, comparing to the AV side of things, what we're typically working with is a cable similar to this. So this is a KNX cable, but pretty much all the cable infrastructure for BMS systems is the same when we're talking about comms. So usually it would be a twisted pair, abbreviated as TP. Not toilet paper, this is twisted pair. And protocols, as I mentioned, this cable here is a KNX cable, but you can pretty much talk any protocol if you've got this type of cable. So it might be Modbus, it might be BACnet, or as I mentioned, this cable. This cable is specifically for KNX, but you can do lots of other stuff on it. But yeah, this is manufactured by KNX Association. So, and you can see that there's actually two twisted pairs in here. Typically, you'll only use one twisted pair, but there's an extra pair in there for doing other things. I'm not going to get into the details of that beyond the scope of this video. But yeah, that gives you an idea of what the comms cable looks like when you're dealing with BMS systems. Okay, so the fundamental skill set that underpins BMS controls is electrical controls. This is kind of like the profession, the skill set that will help you the most in terms of like a foundational skill set and understanding is electrical controls. Okay, so key thing there is to recognize that it's electrical. Okay, it's electrical. So who is this profession and this sector should I say, the BMS sector, best suited to? And as mentioned here, it's electrical professionals, because electrical professionals, similar to the AV people who have already got an understanding in IT, networking, IP, electrical professionals have already got an understanding in electrical. To what level that is, maybe that's if they're an electrician, it's more lighting and power, but they have an understanding, the importance of electrical safety, importance of regulations when it comes to installation. And a lot of these principles and understandings are extremely useful and are the same thing when it comes to doing, BMS stuff, and working with like HVAC, lighting. I mean, they already know lighting, shading, energy management, security, access, heating, plumbing stuff, more the controls around this rather than the actual plumbing itself. So, going into a control panel, although it might seem very daunting because they've not sort of really had the time to go through it and understand it, but what you'll realize is a lot of the principles are exactly the same. So that's who the BMS controls industry is best suited to. That's why you see a lot of electrical professionals moving into this industry, like electricians upskilling and becoming BMS engineers. So let's move back up now and let's go over to, or from, the habitable environment. So I'm talking, just to recap, these were habitable environments. So AV solutions and BMS, or building energy management automation systems, all talking about habitable environments, buildings, properties, homes, ships, boats. Now, let's now move over to unhabitable environments, okay? And just to recap, what I'm talking about here is industrial sectors, and there is just so much opportunity. It's crazy. There is just so much opportunity when you start looking at all the sectors that comes under industrial controls and instrumentation. It's crazy. You'll find factories, warehouses, workshops that do things associated with these things, even if they're not actually like doing the manufacturing or processing the oil and gas. They're businesses that produce things for these industries. So, it goes far beyond just, the specific sites that do food and beverage processing or building cars and stuff. It's just crazy. And I get very excited because I just know how much opportunity there is with the skill set that we're going to talk about. So yeah, manufacturing, chemical, oil and gas, pharmaceutical, food and drink and beverages, mining, aerospace, water treatment. So that's another massive one. Water processing, water treatment, certainly in the UK, rail, military, like agricultural. It's just huge. It just really is. Okay. Now I've got that excitement out the way. Let's go over and have a look at sort of how this is defined. So similarly to how BMS and building energy management and automation systems is defined, made up of all these subsystems, really when you break down the industrial sectors, it comes down to process control and instrumentation. That's kind of what defines unhabitable environments, because we're processing stuff, we're creating stuff, we're monitoring stuff, we're building things, basically. We're producing things. So if we then break that down further, what does that mean? Well, it means sensors, switches, valves, motors, actuators, dampers, PLCs, HMIs, so PLCs, programmable logic controllers, HMIs, human machine interface, SCADA. Embarrassing, I can't remember what that is off the top of my head. Let's have a quick look. Here we go. Supervisory control and data acquisition. Okay. Really, this is kind of like how I think of SCADA is an overview, a screen with an overview the whole process and control system, so we can see specifically what's going on with like sensors, switches, valves, motors and stuff, and it's all being displayed in one place. HMI, human machine interface, this is more of like a screen on the front of a control panel where we can just interact with that control system or panel on a single level, if that makes sense, rather than like a big overview of all the systems combined. Relays, contactors, overloads, PSUs, control panels, transformers, etc. And actually what you'll see is a lot of these things here are the specific field hardware or parts hardware that make up a lot of the things in the building energy management system sector. So there's a lot of similarities there in terms of like the process, the process control and the instrumentation that is used. So process control systems. And I'm sure a lot of you people who are interested in this industry or already working in this industry are aware of these. So Siemens, Vargo, Wago, Rockwell, Schneider, ABB, Mitsubishi, Honeywell. These are all big players, big manufacturers when it comes to industrial process control and instrumentation. And what you'll see is certainly ABB. So Cylon is owned by ABB, and they focus on like more building control. But ABB, you got Vargo, which does building control and does process control. And actually you've also got Siemens that does building control as well. You've got Schneider that does building control. So you can start to see that there is quite a big overlap, in terms of what's going on up here in process control and instrumentation to what's actually in the field when we break down HVAC systems, lighting systems, energy management systems. And you can see that the manufacturers, the systems, there's a lot of overlap as well. And the reason being is because the types of controllers that get used are also PLC programmable logic controllers. So here's a Siemens example. You can see it's well, you can't actually see the inputs outputs on this one because it's covered by this flap, this cover, but it's the same thing. Inputs and outputs, inputs and outputs. It's all the same thing. And in terms of cable infrastructure, and again, just sticking with the comms, we've got it's when you get into like process control, it depends on how modern an installation you're working with. So it could be like older style twisted pair, or it could be like newer modern systems like Siemens using Profinet, I think it's called. They're communicating across Ethernet. Either way, most PLCs will have at least an Ethernet connection to connect them to a larger system, to connect them to like a SCADA system. And also, if it's just a standalone system, maybe, just in a high-end residential or the plant room of a building like a school or a leisure centre, you want them connected to the internet as well. And as we found out over on the AV section, IP protocol uses Ethernet. So all of these PLCs, they have an Ethernet port. Where is it here? Can't see it. Ethernet, there we go. Ethernet port. So they all have Ethernet connections anyway. So as you can see, again, we've got a lot of overlap. We've got PLCs, we've got a very similar cable infrastructure. And again, the skill set, ultimately, if you want a fundamental skill set that's going to help you in process control, industrial controls, instrumentation, it's electrical controls. If you go searching electrical control engineer, the things that they talk about are relevant for this industry over here and this industry over here. So yeah, skill set. The fundamental skill set that everything builds upon in this industry is also electrical controls. So makes sense that the people that this industry is best suited to are electrical professionals, exactly the same as over here on the BMS side. So you can probably see where I'm going with this. These industries, BMS, BEMS, BAS, building energy management and automation systems for buildings, so habitable environments, buildings, properties, homes, ships, boats, and all these sectors that come under the unhabitable environments, you know, like the manufacturing sector, chemical, oil and gas, mining, water treatment, agriculture, all of these, it's kind of the same thing, as you can see here. So my argument is ultimately these are the same industries. These are the same industries, same skill set, same controllers, same manufacturers, same things out in the field or things controlling the things over here. It's all the same thing. So what I encourage people to do, if you are from an electrical background, you're an electrician, you're a maintenance engineer, you're an electrical engineer or heating engineer or mechanical engineer, this is the area, this is the skill set I would encourage you to learn. Get this under your belt as the fundamentals, because then that's the beginning of crazy amounts of opportunity for you, where you can go down this route into the BMS industry, or you can go down this route into the industrial sectors. And if you're actually good and you know your stuff and you've understood electrical controls, as you can see, there's just no chance that you will ever go hungry, that you will ever be without opportunity. It's just bonkers the amount of opportunity that's out there in terms of career prospects. You as a contractor, you as a service provider, as a business, there's just too much. There's too much for there not to be opportunity. So look, if you're electrical bias, more interested in electrical, this is the route to go, as you can see. Hopefully I've made a good casing point for that. These are the same industries. BMS and industrial controls are the same industries, same sectors, huge amounts of overlap. And yeah, if you want to pick an industry, a skill set that's going to give you an abundance of opportunity, learn electrical controls. Learn the skill set, electrical controls, because everything in these industries builds upon that fundamental understanding. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, like, subscribe, see you on the next one.